reinventing an iconic character like Batman with a dark and moody take in the late 1980s is no easy task. When the movie had casting choices that were heavily criticised, and fans and media alike wanting to shake off the campy memories of the Adam West years. Now, the Adam West show is iconic for good reason, but it's not what audiences wanted for a dark reinvention of the character. And that is what Tim Burton, Jack Nicholson, and Michael Keaton were faced with in this late 80s superhero movie. And on the 30th anniversary, it's time to head back to Gotham City as we look back at Batman 1989. I think when most people know Batman's origins so well, even back in the late 80s, an origin story would be unnecessary. Sam Hamm had the same perspective and wrote the screenplay where the story would be told through flashbacks, as he felt this would be more appropriate and that this would unlock the mystery of the movie, of which was a driving plot point in Bruce discovering who killed his parents. Now, most comic book purists will say that it was Joe Chill who murdered Thomas and Martha Wayne. And they're absolutely right. But to have more of an emotional connection between the Joker and Batman, it was actually a smart idea to have the story set where a young Jack Napier shot Bruce's parents in attempting to rob them. Whilst origin stories are good, it can take time in establishing the beginning of the character's journey to the payoff of them becoming the titular character. It's far simpler to have Bruce already established as Batman at the start of the movie, but like an onion, you peel away the layers of his character and his origin as the movie progresses. What makes this movie work is pacing. It knows when to slow the action down so that the audience can absorb necessary character building and to see action segments being set up. The way that bats his first encounter with Napier as Joker to where he crashes through the glass roof and rescuing Vicky from him. The tension is built from Joker poisoning everyone in the art gallery to finding Vicky in the restaurant and attempting to scar her face just as he did with Alicia. Added with Elfman's score and you have the perfect action sequence with Nicholson capping it off with his iconic one-liner.
Where does he get those wonderful toys?
And to answer Awesome Lydia's question, I don't know either. In the scene that has been dubbed by many as the Battle of the Freaks, you could argue is Batman confronting his inner demons that have tortured him since his childhood. He got to confront his parents' assailant whilst coming to Vicky Vale's aid and saving her from falling to the streets below from the cathedral roof. The death scene of the Joker was really horrific for 1989, where Batman essentially aided in killing him by having the Bat Grapple attach one of the stone gargoyles to Joker's ankle, pulling him down the steps of the rope ladder and seeing his face disappear into the darkness as he fell to his death. Probably just as gruesome was seeing the sick grin on his face as the police witness his body laying lifeless, hearing a laughing voice box from his coat. But then again, he did say,
"If you gotta go, go with a smile."
I know they say practice what you preach, but even so, that's a bit extreme. The writing has aged well to where I can happily watch this anytime. It's timeless. Keaton was met with criticism from fans and critics alike for when he was cast as the titular character, because, from their perspective, how could they take this casting choice seriously from a man that was mostly known for playing comedic roles in the 1980s? From The Dream Team to Beetlejuice, of which the latter he worked under Tim Burton. But it would be Keaton, Warner Brothers, and Tim Burton that would have the last laugh, as Keaton's performance won him widespread acclaim from fans and critics with a take on Bruce Wayne that was very withdrawn and very uncomfortable being the heir to the Wayne estate, and more comfortable being Batman. I think this is one of the reasons why many gravitate to Keaton as the quintessential Batman, as he doesn't do a lot of talking as the Dark Knight, and seemingly not that much either as Bruce. He lets his actions and his non-verbal acting speak for him, particularly when you see him laying a pair of roses in Crime Alley where his parents were slain by a much younger Jack Napier. You can see the pain in his eyes remembering what had taken place decades before on that fateful night where his innocence had been taken from him, and the night he was reborn as Batman. Most people that have seen and read various interpretations of Batman's origin story are aware that was the beginning of his journey. And one of my personal favourite scenes of Keaton as Batman is this.
Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man!
I'm not going to kill you. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
The way he says,
I'm Batman.
is so subtle. He doesn't oversell it, he doesn't say it in a gravelly voice. He says it in a lower register, which was his idea as well. And he says it like it's all they need to know. As much as Michael Keaton shined as this memorable take on The Dark Knight, it's Jack Nicholson that steals the show as the clown prince of crime. Everything from his facial expressions, the delivery of his lines, and jokes to the general overall package of how he transformed himself from a lead henchman as Jack Napier, which I might add was a nod to the late Alan Napier who played Alfred in the 60s TV show, to the Joker. And it has to be said that Jack ceased to be Nicholson when he became the Joker completely, with this deviously charming and energetic antagonist. When you consider that this man has a knack for playing dark characters from The Shining to The Postman Always Rings Twice, playing the Joker was playtime for him. I've said many a time down the years that people who enjoy their work will show it in their performance. And Jack was enjoying this so much that he must have been drinking this in. He enjoyed being the Joker. So much so that he negotiated what was considered one of the biggest deals in Hollywood before Robert Downey Jr.'s when he took on the role of Iron Man. He knew how big and successful this movie would be, along with later sequels, that he would be paid a percentage of the box office profits, which would then transfer onto home release sales onto VHS and then later DVD, Blu-ray and 4K, and whenever the movie would be shown on TV. So anytime this movie is shown on TV, he is sent a check in the mail. Has to be said. Smart man as well as a damn good actor. Now, with any superhero movie, there is always a love interest. Christopher Reeve's Superman had Margot Kidder's Lois Lane, so Michael Keaton had Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale. What Kim brings to the table as Vale is someone who is persistent and inquisitive as a reporter, but she shows there is a lot of warmth to her, as she can see there is more to Bruce Wayne than just his billions and being a playboy bachelor. Basinger is one of the very few examples that has the talent to match her looks. You look at Kim, and you're just taken in by her beauty. She is just stunning to look at and has the acting talent to make you believe that she is this character as a photojournalist. When she is confronting Bruce for being less than honest for going out of town for a few days, when in actuality he goes to Crime Alley, you can actually feel the tension between the two. And that's real chemistry. And that also takes exceptional good talent to make that happen. And Kim does it in spades. The late Michael Gough as Alfred Pennyworth was just a joy to watch, with his dry wit in how he worked with Bruce as his butler and in aiding him as Batman. He plays a good surrogate father to Bruce in where you can feel the warmth from his delivery and the advice he attempts to give when discussing how he feels about Vicky Vale. He would continue to play Alfred in the 3 sequels that would follow, with only him and Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon being the only cast members to reprise their roles. Robert Wuhl as Alexander Knox I felt was a guy that was trying to get something credible out of something that was seen as a joke from others' perspective, when reporting on the Batman sightings, of which Lieutenant Eckhart alludes to at the start of the movie.
Don't be writing this stuff in your newspaper, Knox. It'll ruin your already useless reputation.
Pat Hingle, I felt, was almost a background character as the police commissioner of Gotham. Gordon was a key figure in the comics, and being a liaison to Batman as one of the very few authority figures that could see Batman was trying to help the crime situation. Mind you, this is down to the fact that Tim Burton didn't read a Batman comic before making this movie, therefore was unaware of the importance of Jim Gordon in Batman lore. This is something that would change in 2005's Batman Begins, where Gordon is one of the key central figures from Bruce's journey from boy to Dark Knight. But in this movie, Hingle is just the commissioner and doesn't have any connection with the Dark Knight until the end when Bat presents the police the Bat Signal. Hingle does well with what little he has to work with, but I felt he could have been given more. I enjoyed Jack Palance's performance as the mob boss Carl Grissom, as he can clearly see there's something going on between Alicia, played by Jerry Hall, and Jack, as he gets him to take the full Axis chemicals, which ultimately sees the birth of the Joker. Palance portrays Grissom with this touch of class even though he's playing an antagonist, and the way he sells his death at the hands of the Joker was flawless. When you have Tim Burton as director, you know he's going to go to town with the creepy and at times otherworldly aspects. And this actually works for Batman. When you consider the origins of the character and how his parents were murdered in front of him, this wasn't going to be a Saturday morning version of Batman. Although, that said, the very notion of Tim Burton being in charge of art direction for a Saturday morning show is terrifying in its own right. I could just imagine a Saturday morning version of Power Rangers under Burton's watch, with Danny Elfman doing the score for that, no less. Jokes aside, Burton knew exactly with what he was doing with this movie, with how he made Gotham look and feel like it belonged to a different time and place, with its timeless surroundings from street signs to how the Batmobile looked, also known as the Burtonmobile, the Batsuit, and the wardrobe of this movie. The effects with this movie are mainly with Batman's gadgets and the Batmobile. The miniature special effects were supervised by Derek Meddings. He worked on Jerry Anderson shows from Stingray to Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, and he worked on the first two Superman movies. Even James Bond's GoldenEye, which was his last movie. They looked great in 1989 and very little has changed, and with no CG. Not that they would have been able to, as CG was still very experimental in the late 80s. It would show a breakthrough in 1991's Terminator 2 and even more so with 1993's Jurassic Park. But for Batman, I think it helped that this movie worked with practical effects. And let's talk about the Batmobile, shall we? I personally think it's the greatest Batmobile ever, with a sleek racing car look with a rear rocket that was a nod to the 60s Batmobile. This was a car that the kids wanted as much as the adults. It was fast, well-equipped, and perfect for evading criminals and the law, because Batman wasn't accepted by the police at the start of the movie. I felt it borrowed a little from Knight Rider with the way it was able to move by itself. Now, whether this was AI on the car or had enough intelligent sensors on it to navigate around obstacles, I'm inclined to think it was the former. But I do notice a similarity between this Batmobile and the two kits from Knight Rider G1 and SG. They all have similar looking indicator lights at the front. This was taken from a Honda and turned upside down. When you have a composer like Danny Elfman performing duties on a big budget like this one, then you know you're going to get your money's worth. Elfman had developed a rapport with Tim Burton since working with him on his first feature film in 1985, which was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Danny was able to bring this dark, gothic and brooding feel to Batman that fans had been longing for years after only being familiar with the camp take from the 1960s show. The best way I can describe the score for this movie, as well as providing good scoring for action and fight sequences, it also provides this sense of fear and horror, particularly if you listen to the piece when Batman and Vicky Vale are returning to the Batcave after escaping the Joker's men. It creates a feeling of unease and this sense of the unknown, that even though Batman saved Vale's life, can she trust him, whilst looking so intimidating with his outfit? I think the most memorable pieces of the score are the opening credits where you're entering the world of this new take on the Caped Crusader and know that this isn't going to be your daddy's Batman from the Adam West years. This is something that is dark, moody, and suspenseful. And the ending score where the camera is panning up to the rooftops where the bat signal is lit for the first time and seeing Batman standing triumphant was such a fitting way to end the first movie in reinventing the character for a new age. Coupled together with an amazing soundtrack from one of the most legendary recording artists in Prince, and you have something that will be talked about for years to come. And rightly so. There's not really a lot you could improve on with this flick. It has stood the test of time to where you can watch this 2, 5, 10, or in the case of this anniversary, 30 years since its theatrical release, and still be entertained by it. It earned over $400 million in box office sales, which is good business even by today's standards. The right performers were chosen for the correct roles, where it's not actors playing the characters, but you're seeing the characters on screen. In a similar vein to when people think of Christopher Reeve as Superman. They're not seeing an actor play Superman. They're seeing Superman. Michael Keaton is the quintessential Batman. He has the right mannerisms as both Bruce Wayne and the titular character, where subtlety is the key, and acting as the man that operates within the shadows. Jack Nicholson is the go-to Joker for a lot of fans, with his energetic presence and charisma as the iconic Batman Rogue Gallery member. And he actually tells jokes. I know a lot of people love Heath Ledger's take on the Joker. I enjoyed his performance in that role as well, but I felt partially let down because he wasn't cracking enough jokes. That's not a knock on him, just constructive criticism. It's why I love Nicholson's take on the character, because I feel he's not acting in this movie. He's just having fun, and that's what makes it more memorable.
I don't know.
Uh-oh. You don't look happy. He's been using Brand X. But with new Joker brand, I get a grin.
The movie was up against stiff competition that year in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, and the long-awaited sequel to 1985's Back to the Future with Back to the Future Part 2. It inspired the iconic and groundbreaking Batman the Animated Series in 1992 that would lay the groundwork for DC's animated universe, which is still considered the best way to adapt a superhero into an animated series. Batman would be followed with two good sequels in 1992's Batman Returns and 1995's Batman Forever. And then 1997's less than pleasing Batman and Robin. Thank you, Raiden. Of which the latter would see the franchise stall and then be rebooted with 2005's Batman Begins with a more realistic and grounded version of the character played by Christian Bale. Batman has stood the test of time to where it has been enjoyed by multiple generations of fans, from those that first saw it in 1989 to those watching it now that weren't even born in the late 80s or 90s. It is enjoyed by many fans today on DVD, Blu-ray, and for the first time ever, 4K. I'm MJ Knight, and long live Batman 1989. It's much simpler to have Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne? Bruce goes out in the rain, so he's Bruce Wayne? Yeah, that's a fudge up. I now have this image now of, instead of, Batman, he's now Rain Man. Rain Man, what is the weather today? It's going to rain. Wasn't that a Dustin Hoffman movie? Comment section below. Most people that have seen and read various interpretations of Batman are... Batman! That is my Christian Bale impression. Palance portrays Grissom with a touch of class, even though he's playing an antagonist, and the way he sells his Jeff. Is there a Jeff in Batman? I don't know. Well, the watch is going off. Danny was able to bring this dark, brooding, and gothic take on Batman that fans had been longing for so many years after only being familiar with the... This is going to fill the blooper reel up.